Okay, today we are going to talk about adding and subtracting imaginary numbers. Yesterday we simplified negative radicals, which were imaginary numbers. Today we're going to learn how to add and subtract them. Please make sure that you take out a sheet of loose leaf paper if you chose not to print out the notes. To add and subtract imaginary numbers, all we're going to do is simplify each term if we can, and then add or subtract like terms. If I look at the first example, it says 2 plus 4i plus 3 minus 6i. Just pretend that the i's are like x's. So I'm going to add my regular numbers together. So 2 plus 3, that gives me 5. And then I'm going to add my I terms together. So 4i plus negative 6i is negative 2i. You cannot add together a 5 and a negative 2i or subtract them, so that is your final answer. If we were to subtract, again, I'm going to combine like terms. 4 minus 5 is negative 1, and negative 3 minus 5 is negative 8i. That is my final answer. It gets a little more complicated when we throw radicals in, but again, we're going to first simplify. So when I see a negative under my radical, I make it positive and I put an I out front. So this is 2i. Now I'm going to think of factors of 27. 9 times 3 is 27. I'm going to simplify. The square root of 9 is 3. So now this radical becomes 6i radical 3. Now when I go to the second radical, again, make that positive, put an I in front, so I have plus 3i. And for my radical, since I have a 3 here, I'm hoping to get a 3 here, so how about 3 times 4? The square root of 4 is 2, so this becomes also 6i radical 3. Now, because the I radical 3's are the same, we're going to add 6 plus 6 is 12, and then we're going to write the I radical 3. If they didn't both have an I, you could not add them. If they both weren't radical 3, you could not add them. If I look at my second example, again, when I see a negative under a radical, the first thing I do is make it positive and put an I out front. So now I have 6i. Factors of 50 are 25 times 2. The square root of 25 is 5. So this becomes 30i radical 2. For the second one, I'm going to make that positive and put an I out front, so 3i. Again, because I have a radical 2 here, check. 2 times 16 is 32. The square root of 16 is 4. So this one becomes minus 12i radical 2. Once again, because both terms are I radical 2, I'm just going to do 30 minus 12. That's going to give me 18, and I rewrite the I radical 2. This is my answer. Next one. Again, the first thing I'm going to do, I see a negative, I put an I. Factors of 8 are 4 times 2. The square root of 4 is 2, so this becomes 2i radical 2. Now I'm going to look at the second one. I make that positive, I put an I out front. Factors of 27, I would look for a 2, but 2 doesn't go into it. 9 times 3. The square root of 9 is 3, so this becomes plus 3i radical 3. If I look at the third term, again, I'm going to put an I out front because there's a negative under the radical. This is negative 3i. Factors of 12, 1 is a perfect square. That becomes 4 times 3. The square root of 4 is 2. So now this becomes negative 6i radical 3. If I look at the last one, again, put an I out front This becomes 4i. Factors of 18. Hopefully you pick 9 times 2, because 9 is the biggest perfect square there. So now this becomes 12i radical 2. Now if I look at this big mess, this is a radical 2, an I radical 2, and this here is an I radical 2. So what's 2 minus 12? That gives me negative 10I radical 2. This is an I radical 3, and this is an I radical 3. So positive 3 minus 6 is negative 3I radical 3. Remember, we can only combine like terms, so you can only add things that have an I and the same radical. So in the box, that's your final answer. Last one. Again, it's a lot of radicals. If I look at the first one, I have radical 40. So to simplify that, I'm going to go with 4 times 10. The square root of 4 is 2, so this becomes 2 radical 10. For the second term, the first thing I notice is this is negative. I make it positive and put an I out front. Numbers for 98 are 49 times 2. The square root of 49 is 7. So this becomes minus 7i radical 2. Notice there is a minus sign here, so we're going to subtract. Now if I look at the 90, I'm going to pick 9 times 10. The square root of 9 is 3. So this becomes 3 radical 10. Now if I look at the negative 32, the negative tells me I put an I. To find factors of 32, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I have a 2 over here and an I. I have an I really want a 2. So 2 times 16. The square root of 16 is 4. So this one becomes 4i radical 2. And once again, we're just going to combine like terms. This one here is something with a radical 10, so is this. So 2 minus 3 is negative 1 radical 10. You can put the 1 here, you do not have to. Then if I look at this, this is an I radical 2. This is an I radical 2. So negative 7 minus 4 more is negative 11 I radical 2. This is my final answer. Please make sure that you write down any questions you may have and either ask me next time you see me or email me.